This is 911. Do you have an emergency?
Today on Rescue 911, a preschool nightmare.
There's blood all over her face and her legs was just limp.
A little girl crushed under a bus.
And I kept calling her name, and she never responded.
Becomes a medical team's biggest challenge. Then,
my son, I never saw him in such pain.
two boys playing with matches get badly burned.
You take care of your kids' pains and stuff, but something like that, you can't.
On Rescue 911.
Perhaps the deepest expression of love for our children lies in the actions we take to protect them and help keep them safe. I'm William Shatner. Tonight, on a special episode of Rescue 911 to promote child safety, we are reminded that the youthful innocence that makes a child's life so precious and full of possibilities also places them at much greater risk. We begin on the afternoon of November 4th, 1991 in Bluntville, Tennessee, as a group of kids were on their way home from school. 8-year-old Courtney Maples and her little sister Whitney rode the same school bus every day.
I was sitting with Jennifer Cole, and Whitney was sitting with Becky Ford. Whitney had a picture, and I put it up to my eye, and I looked through it, and I just saw like a black outline of a turkey drawn. She said that she had to get it to her mom, so I figured it was real special. When Whitney was walking up to the house, the turkey blew out of her hand. We heard a thump, and I saw her laying on the ground.
When we continue.
It's the most terrifying feeling you could ever imagine. And I kept calling her name, and she never responded at all. She just lay there.
What happened?
When 5-year-old Whitney Maples chased after a picture that fell under her school bus, she was run over by the vehicle in front of her house. Her sister Courtney's screams for help were heard inside by their mother, Tammy.
When I opened the door, I saw Whitney laying in the road.
Whitney! Whitney!
It's the most terrifying feeling you could ever imagine, to see your child laying out there like that. And I kept calling her name, and she never responded at all. She just lay there.
What happened?
I've been a bus driver for 38 years, the same route. I didn't know what to think when I saw what had happened.
I was scared because Whitney was so small and the bus was so big.
911, what's your emergency?
My sister got run over by the bus!
Okay, and they got hit by a bus?
My sister did!
Is your sister?
Please, hurry, please!
Okay, there's going to be help on the way.
School bus versus pedestrian. Pedestrian would be a 5-year-old child.
I thought she was dead because there was blood all over her face and her legs was just limp. And I figured that every bone in her body was broke because she was so small. It just scared me half to death.
It's okay, lay still. Lay still, honey, just lay still.
What are we gonna do?
I couldn't even imagine living my life without one of my children.
Don't move.
You think that you're about as deep as your love can get, and then when something like this happens, you realize that there's a bottomless pit that you've never even hit yet.
Within 3 minutes of the call, Sullivan County EMS units arrived on the scene, including EMT Jim Perry.
When I first heard from somebody that she had been run over by a 7-ton school bus, I just thought, there's no way. How could she still be alive and be run over by a full-size school bus?
Paramedic Stacy Mahan tried to comfort 5-year-old Whitney.
We were both affected very much by this little girl. It was hard for me because I wanted to do more and more for her, but there was only so much that we could do.
When we came out of the ambulance, I picked her tennis shoes up, and I was still carrying her tennis shoes with me. That was the last thing of her I had to hold on to.
Rear wheels of the bus ran over her pelvis area.
Whitney was admitted to Holston Valley Hospital, where a trauma team was awaiting her arrival, including respiratory therapist Sherry Bailey.
When they asked her what her name was, she said that her name was Whitney Maples. And that's when I turned to look at the other therapist that was with me, and I told her, I know this little girl. She's in my daughter's class. And that's when I realized it could be my child in that position.
She's still talking to you, all right?
Still talking.
Anna, do you see anything in her head up there other than just those scrapes?
Not that we can tell. Looks like just on her forehead. X-ray.
Most of the time when we transfer a patient over to a facility like this, we back out of the way and let them do their job on her. But Whitney was still holding on to Jim's hand, so we kind of stayed in there with her.
With the extent of Whitney's injuries, we didn't know if she would live through surgery. She was crushed. It was just that simple.
Oh man, that's terrible. Look at that. Look how far those pelvis is spread apart there. She's got multiple.
Whitney's condition was critical. Doctors informed her parents that she would have to be transferred to a trauma center better equipped to handle her injuries.
I don't cry much for anything, but, I felt like I couldn't do a thing in the world for her. And at that point, I broke down.
Is your mom? She's asked for her mama a couple times. Mommy's here. There she is, darling.
Daddy's here.
Daddy's here too with me.
When parents come in, to me, that's the hard part, because you see all the pain that's in their eyes and their hearts. I think we all kind of teared up together.
Whitney's parents were not allowed to accompany her on the flight.
I kept asking them, why won't you let me go? And I kept thinking, she won't be there when I get there. If I'm with her, maybe I can hold on to her a little bit longer.
She was taken by Lifestar helicopter 120 miles to the University of Tennessee Hospital, while her parents followed by car.
I said, Lord, just let her survive. We can handle anything else. That's all I want is for her to live.
Orthopedic surgeon Richard Smith was part of the team that worked to rebuild Whitney's pelvis.
The problem with a 5-year-old patient is finding parts that'll fit her. The pins and the systems we have are designed for adults.
Let's get a pretty long, solid bar to put across there.
I basically had the operating room personnel open up everything we owned and laid them all out there until I found one that fit her.
Good. Okay.
How is she? She's doing okay. She's stable right now.
It's awful to see your child that way. Some that you send them off to school and they're a perfect little girl, and the next time you see them, you just wonder if they'll ever be the same again.
Ready, set, go. Run hard. Go, 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 go. Run, 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 run.
5-year-old Whitney Maples was hospitalized for almost 3 weeks and underwent numerous operations.
Ready, set, go. Fast as you can. Go, Whitney.
In the 9 months since the accident, she has undergone physical therapy to learn to walk again and has made an amazing recovery.
Her outlook is very good considering what she had happened to her. She kind of waddles side to side a little bit, but overall I think it looks great.
You're doing good.
Good job, okay.
It's funny to see these doctors just look at this child and say, we just can't believe that she's healed this well. They just look at her in amazement.
There you go, good job. Dad almost lost it that time.
She come by our station. It was just great. When she come running through the door and I seen her, it was just a great feeling. That told me why I went to school for all these years and worked all these hours. Whitney was the reason.
It makes me ecstatically happy to see her doing what she's doing. It's a miracle. And every day I look at her and I just appreciate her a little more.
I'm thrilled about Whitney. It makes me just feel good knowing that she's going to be okay.
see that?
I missed her a whole bunch because she wasn't home to play Barbies with me. But you wouldn't want to have her for a sister. She's so mean.
Come on, sweetie.
There's some more ducks over
I'm just happy that I can walk again. And I am never going to go in front of a bus again, because you'll get run over.
Next.
I was washing dishes, and I knew they were playing out in the backyard. I mean, they did that all the time.
Children are never too young to start learning life-saving techniques. You never know when a child might be the only one around in a moment of crisis. That moment came for 10-year-old Jacob Walsh in a quiet residential neighborhood of Pasadena, Texas, on October 30th, 1988. David Parker will never forget that Sunday morning.
He looked at me and said, "Daddy, is this a dream?" And I said, I wished it was.
The Parkers and the Walshes had lived next door to each other for years. On this day, like so many others, their sons were playing together in the backyard of David and Kathy Parker's house.
I was just kind of walking around the house, drinking my coffee. And Jacob and Kale were in my backyard on the patio playing. They were playing with the volcano.
Her 8-year-old son Kale's model volcano had been built with the help of his father as a science project.
They pour baking soda in the top of it, and they're supposed to see how it erupts. Next thing I knew, I saw them jumping the fence because Jacob lives next door.
They wanted to use Jacob Walsh's skateboard ramp as a platform for the volcano.
We just got it and brought it over to my backyard. Just set it on the middle of the ramp.
Neither boy was allowed to use matches.
We got a match and just put a match in there and burn leaves. It just burned.
The two boys kept trying to get a fire started in the volcano using matches and leaves, while Jacob's grandmother worked just inside the house.
I was washing dishes, and I knew they were playing out in the backyard. I mean, they did that all the time.
Okay, here we go. Stand back.
I called for Terry as I went out the back door.
I just chased after him and rolled him over on the ground.
I just stood there. I couldn't move.
When I was in kindergarten, I remember the stop, drop, and roll. Then he wouldn't roll over, so I just rolled him over. If I wouldn't have rolled him over, he probably would have died.
I heard some screaming. He wasn't on fire anymore, but he was standing there telling me, "Terry, I'm on fire, I'm on fire." And I told Jacob, I said, run get David.
Jacob ran next door to get Kale's father, David.
He couldn't even speak. He was so white. My son, I never saw him in such pain in my life, and I feel so helpless. I couldn't do nothing for him, really.
He was terrified. And a mother knows their child's cry. It was very different.
Kathy's call for help came in at 9:45 a.m.
911, please state your emergency. I said, my son is burnt. He's in pain. I need an ambulance. Hurry up, get here now. That's when they told me to put the water on him, the cold towels.
I just try to comfort him. I mean, usually you can take care of your kids' pains and stuff, but something like that, you can't.
Pasadena police officers were on the scene within 3 minutes.
What happened? What happened? He was burned.
My heart was going 90 miles an hour. I just didn't want him to be in pain. When he was quiet, I could calm down. But then when he started reacting, I reacted with him.
Paramedics James Kelton and Mark Donovan arrived less than 2 minutes later.
I think when paramedics and EMTs deal with children, everybody gets a little nervous, a little uptight. You usually deal with adults who can tell you what's wrong and how they're feeling. But when you get children, they're scared and they just want to be with mom or dad.
I did notice the unique smell of burned flesh, which if you've never smelled burnt flesh before, it is a very unique scent that you will not soon forget. Burns were concentrated on his legs and I believe his left arm and his left ear and a portion of his neck. It just looked like somebody had come and just peeled away a piece of skin and just exposing what was left out underneath it. We basically made a sandwich out of him using what we call sterile burn sheets. Doused it down completely with sterile water. We felt that that would best serve reducing the pain and to put out any fire that may be remaining burning in the skin tissues itself.
When they would pour the water on Cale's legs, he was all right for approximately a second to a minute. And then he would just start screaming. I begged them to give him something for pain, and they said that they couldn't.
Cale was rushed to a nearby parking lot where a special helicopter landing zone had been set up.
I was scared. I thought it was my fault because I poured the gasoline in there and I burned him.
This one Life Flight nurse, she hugged me and she said, "We'll take good care of him." And they just said that there's no room on the helicopter for me. I felt like dying. I was thinking he's probably terrified. I mean, I felt worse not being with him than I did being with him and not being able to help him.
The flight to Herman Hospital in Houston took less than 12 minutes.
There is no doubt that a burn injury is the most devastating type of injury that the human body can sustain.
Dr. Donald Parks, a leading burn expert, was waiting to treat Cale.
Okay, y'all, this is a 9-year-old. He was in a gasoline explosion.
I recall that Cale coped very well. He was panicky, but he did cooperate in all our requests.
Cale, how old are you, Cale?
I noted that he had extensive burns, including burns to his ear, to his back, both arms, and very deep burns to both legs. Many of the burns on his legs were third degree, destroying all the layers of skin. The burns were subsequently cleaned to attempt to prevent contamination of the burn wound, which ultimately could lead to an infection.
He was wrapped from head to toe in bandages. He looked like a mummy, and he had tubes everywhere. And he looked up at me and his dad, and he said, "Am I gonna be in trouble for this?" Well, at that point, I had to walk out of the room.
You think kids know better, and I know Cale knew better, I know Jacob knew better, but they think they got things under control, I guess. I think, oh, well, we know it's bad to do this, but it, you know, we can play with it and not get hurt. But evidently they can't.
In the year and a half since Cale Parker was burned, he's undergone a series of painful skin graft operations. Fire Marshal Bill Yearout believes that Cale survived because his friend Jacob acted quickly and knew what to do.
When a person catches himself on fire, of course he panics. He's going to run. The technique of stop, drop, and roll saves lives. And this is the reason that this one boy is here today.
If he hadn't known stop, drop, and roll, I don't think I'd be alive right now. I'd just keep on burning.
Jacob's mother is proud of her son and grateful to the people who helped prevent a tragedy by teaching stop, drop, and roll.
I have to give thanks to our fire department and for the time that they put into these kids at school. You know, this stop, drop, and roll method, if it saves one life, it's worth all the time that those people put into it.
I tell other kids never to play with matches or never play with gasoline or not to do anything that you know would hurt you unless your parents are there. Now that's over with, I'm just gonna do my best on everything I can do.
Mr. Shapiro, step out of the car, please.